Hey everyone, Jack Kiefer here, and today we're going to take a quick look at Godot Game Engine. Godot Game Engine is a free open source complete gaming development environment for creating both 2D and 3D games. Now Godot is something that I've been kind of toying with. Actually, we kind of go way back. I think the first time I discovered Godot Game Engine was way back when it was in its 0.6 beta, I think. It was a long time ago. Even then, I thought it was really showing a lot of promise. Back then I was, just kind of toying around with Unity mostly, and really liked Unity. The only thing that I didn't like is I always thought, wow, if I ever create the next Candy Crush or Bubble Wit, I'm gonna have to share my booty with Unity. That was a little bit of a turn off, but I understood the reasons too. I mean, they put a lot of money into their product and a lot of hard work, and so yeah, it's just a different model. Godot is completely open source, and you don't have to share anything. Although if you're good at programming and you know how things work with creating a game engine, I'm sure they would love your help. Godot has really become a really great product, and I believe I'm pronouncing that correct, Godot. Back when I first discovered it, I used to call it Godot, and I've heard other people refer to it as that as well. But I happen to know that it's pronounced the Godot, and that's because Godot is named after the person that created it, which is Gal Gadot. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's the wrong Godot. Hers is with an A, this is with an O. Never mind, scratch that. Although we are best buds, we do hang out a lot. We work out together and stuff. Yeah, we're pretty tight, me and Gal.
Yeah, in your dreams, buddy. Seriously? Jeez, what a putz.
Okay, note to self. Delete this part of the video when I'm editing. Yeah, that's it. But actually, Godot is, I think if I remember right, it's named after, I'll have to look it up again, but I actually Googled that because I was a little curious. So I did a search here in Google, and the result I got from my query, where did Godot Game Engine get its name? And the first result here said that stated in a presentation that the name Godot was chosen due to its relation to Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot, as it represents the never-ending wish of adding new features in the engine which would get it closer to an exhaustive product, but never will. Deep. Yeah, nice. So let's check it out. I haven't messed with Godot Game Engine in a long time because I'm not really what you would call a game developer or really even a serious indie. I'm more of a hack, but I do like to play around with stuff like this. And the last time I made something actually was a while ago, back when Godot was in the version 1 dot something. Back then I made a clone of asteroids, but I kind of put my own twist on it, and I actually kind of messed up the physics a little bit while I was creating this game, and the ship started bouncing off the asteroids instead of getting destroyed when there was a collision with an asteroid, and I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, hey, this is actually even more fun, so I called it Bounceroids and created it, and it came out really cool. By the time Godot 2 something was out, the project no longer worked. I mean, this goes back so far that I can't even load it into a new version of Godot anymore and actually do anything with it. Unless they change something in 3 to make it totally backwards compatible. But the back end design on the engine is so radically different now and has evolved so far that really aren't compatible. Maybe someday I'll go ahead and just kind of recreate it. Maybe we'll even do a video. I don't know. We'll see how much interest is out there. Just leave a comment down below and let me know, and I will definitely follow up on that. So let's explore a little bit. So here we got the Godot website, and the game engine, like I said, is totally open source, so you can create a game and you could create the next big thing, and you would not have to pay any royalties to anybody. You would keep 100%, and the current version is 3.2. So that's really cool. And if I remember right, the other cool thing I liked about Godot was that the game engine isn't bloated at all. I mean, I remember, some game engines, and I think even Unity, it was a gigantic, I think it probably took a gig of space at the time. I'm not sure if I'm remembering accurately. And then the other game engine there, Epic, I think. Wow, that was a monster. I mean, my machine buckled under it, so for me it was unusable. But Godot is like in a nice, neat little, back in the day when I downloaded it, it was like 15 megabytes. It was ridiculously small. And I think now it's still only like maybe 60, give or take, 30, 35 maybe. So yeah, it's amazing, all that power. And it looks like they got a beta version out here, 3.24. That's something I downloaded earlier just because I wanted to see what the coolest and grooviest thing was. I haven't actually opened it up yet, so I really haven't gotten to see how different it is. But this is something I'm going to explore more in the future, I think. I kind of like hacking around, and 2D games I think are really fun. And the cool thing about Godot is that it's equally as powerful for 2D games as it is for 3D games. And the language is really cool. Back way in the day, the script was GD script, which it is still using now, and I really like GD script a lot because it's very Python-like, and I'm very familiar with Python. I've built lots of apps in Python, so I'm real comfortable with it right at home. And eventually they came up with a C# mono addition to the scripting, which was really nice for a lot of people that were into C#. And you could integrate it with Mono Develop or Visual Studio now. And I'm seeing that in this newer version, they've added even more language support. C++ is another one, and visual scripting. And if I remember right, I was reading a little earlier that you could also modify it for other languages as well. Personally, I really like the GD script. I think that is really cool, the Godot script, and I've always been real comfortable with it. Let's hit this download 3.2 here. And if we go into the download area, you'll see that they got the versions for all the major desktops here, 64-bit. I'm in the Linux tab here, but you can be in Mac OS, Windows, or even server. And they do have a mono version and a standard GD script. I prefer this standard personally, so that's what I went with, and I downloaded it. And there was something else I wanted to tell you. What was it? Wait for it. It was output. You can build the game for tons of different platforms, Linux, Mac, Windows. You can also build it to HTML5 and WebAssembly. I think is really awesome, so you can put your game online. Also iOS and Android. So to download it, all you had to do is go in the download area, hit that button there, and it'll download. So that's what I did. If I go into my Dolphin here, my apps folder where I put it, okay, it opened up here. I changed something on my theme the other day, and it makes all my buttons look kind of Windows 98-ish. Don't really like that look. I'm gonna have to figure out what I did and change that, but not really relevant to this whole thing. So anyways, I already had downloaded this and extracted it to my drive, and I also downloaded the Godot 3.24 beta. I was kind of curious about that, and as you can see, the uncompressed sizes are 69 megabytes for this entire development environment. Let's open it up real quick. When you first open it up, you're going to get a small window here, a splash, kind of like a splash window, and it has different This is where all your projects are kept. Now this is something I just kind of downloaded from templates here. If you go here and click on your templates tab, there's all kinds of things that you can download, demo type games, to kind of get a feel for what these are. Pong is a good one to start off with if you're not really familiar with designing games, because it's relatively simple, yet it has many basics in it that'll teach you a lot of stuff. And of course this is categorized under a 2D game. There's also demos in here 3D as well. This one would be a 3D kinematic character demo. And I'm just going to do this Pong one real quick. All we have to do is hit download. After you go ahead and click on it, then what you want to do is hit install, and it'll install it for you. So I'll just hit install, and then here on our project path, I'm going to browse to our Godot projects folder. So I'm going to go ahead and select that current folder, and it wants an empty folder. So I need to jump in here and create another folder for this Pong. So I'll just hit create folder, and we'll call it something really original like Pong. And then select, and then install and edit. So after it installs it, it'll open it up here into Godot, and here we have our Pong game, and it's all laid out here, and we have all our objects over here. So this is our scene area, and our main scene consists of a node 2D, and then we have objects underneath it. So it's a little bit hard to kind of describe, but it's all working here. And so theoretically, if I go up here and I run this game, it should run. And there it is. And I'm using my up and down arrows right now. Blink. And as you can see, it's a fully functioning game that one can study if you just kind of wanted to look at the inner workings. So yeah, there we go. That's kind of running this application here. And then you have your different components here. Your left is an area 2D, so I'm assuming that's probably the left side of this Pong. And then our sprite would be the paddle. The sprite is an object that is typically animated, something that you would move. And in this case, it's tied to the up and down arrows. So we can control this in a Y direction going up and down. And then this would be our collision object. So every object or sprite that you have, you'd also need a collision shape. And in this case, a collision shape would be a rectangular shape that's similar to the paddle, and then that detects a collision, so when something hits it like the ball, instead of going through it, it's going to bounce off of it. Yeah, that's kind of the basics. Right over here you see this little symbol, and that's a script symbol. That means that there's a script applied to this left area 2D, which is corresponding to the sprite here and your collision stuff. So if I went ahead and clicked on this guy here, you can see that it opened up the script window, and this is the scripting, all the good stuff that helps make the game come alive. And this particular script is, like I said, corresponds to this particular node here. You notice how I clicked on it and it brought me back to this view here, and then clicking here again takes me back into the script. And all these pretty much have a function ready and a function process, and these are important to have in your scripts typically, because if I remember right, the function ready is things that initialize when you start the game, and if I remember correctly, process is something kind of like a loop. It keeps looping every like millisecond or something like that. For example, this input, if you're holding the arrow key, let's say down, and an object is moving, what's happening is that when you hold that arrow key down, your sprite, like this paddle here, is going to go down like maybe a few pixels, and then this is going to loop again, and your paddle is going to move another few pixels, and then so many milliseconds later that's going to loop again, start over again, and so on. So if you hold that button down, you get your paddle moving smoothly in an animation, so to speak, because it's looping through this process. So hope that makes sense. Those kind of things are a lot easier to explain when you're actually building something and then just kind of you know, coding as you go. But that's kind of roughly how that works. So this Pong game has all these different areas, and then the right would, I'm assuming, is your area 2D over here. And so these different things like the area 2D, these all have a 2D designation on them because this is a 2D game. So we have 2D sprites, 2D collision objects, and all this other stuff that are typical to a 2D game. And so they're coded and optimized for 2D stuff. And so when we have our things like the sprite over here, if we go in here, these are our properties, and this is kind of where you would kind of set your properties and so forth. If we were to, like, say, hit this collision object, we come over here and it's showing us the shape that we gave this object, which is a rectangle. These are other things that you can choose from here if you were going to put a new one in. Capsule shape, a circle, concave, line, ray. So you can really pretty much tailor it to any shape that your character or enemy is going to have. So it's very flexible. And so that's kind of where you would set your shape. That's kind of how that works. And then of course you have your camera here, and you can put your camera settings. I think a lot of times the default is good, but sometimes you need to adjust your camera depending on the type of game you're making, whether it's a platformer or a first-person shooter, anything like that, or something that you're looking at from above. So those are some of the variables. Now if you're going to add a new object in here, then you just go up here and hit this plus sign here. And then the search is really handy. So if you needed to use a sprite, you wanted to open one, you could type in sprite and they come up right here, and you have an animated sprite and a sprite. And so with an animated sprite, you can actually get more features using the animator, which is also included in Godot, which is awesome. If this was a 3D game, then you would put a 3 after it, and you'd see that you can choose from an animated sprite 3D and a sprite 3D. So, and of course those are more tailored to a 3D game and wouldn't really work well here, but kind of how that works. Down here on your lower left, you got your file system here where you can kind of look at the layout of your files. And so here we got our resources, our logic, which should be our script files, and these all have a GD extension on them because they're in the GD, I guess you call it Godot script, I guess. So, and these are all the different scripts, and so you could actually just double click on any of these and go right to them. This is a script that kind of controls the ball and sets up all the different variables for your speed and your position and so forth, and how it's going to react when it's hit and all that. And so that's your logic. And then these are some of your picture files that represent your ball, your icon, your paddle, your Pong, or that's your scene actually. So like the paddle is a PNG file. So if I went up here to sprite, went over here, you'd see that under texture, that's where the PNG file was added. So this is a PNG of the paddle that's loaded in here. So that's where that's coming from. The TSCN extension represents a scene, and in this game we have one scene, which is the Pong main scene. This whole, everything you're looking at here would be the scene. Now in a lot of games, when you get a little more complex and you have a lot of different items and characters and enemies kind of interacting, you would typically have a main scene like you do here, and then your other objects like let's say an enemy ship would actually be saved as another scene, and same with like a main character would be a scene. And then those scenes would be instantiated into your main scene. That sounds a little complicated probably, but that's kind of the gist of it, how you would kind of structure that out. Down here on the bottom, we have our output. We can use the debugger here so we can kind of see what's going on when you're developing. Here's our audio. So you can add in a, like a WAV file or probably an MP3 in here to trigger when, let's say, the ball hits the paddle. It'll go blip, and maybe have another sound when it hits the wall up here, and maybe have it go bloop and back to blip. And so here you can set up your audio. This is our animation area here. So for example, if we were going to put a sprite in here, and let's say we had a character that was a running character, like we're developing a platformer and you got a character that can run, well then you might want to load a sprite sheet into that character where it has all the different frames in his run cycle. And so he might start out like this, and then the next frame is like this, and then like this, and you get the picture. So anyways, that sprite sheet could be loaded in down here, and then you could keyframe anything special down here in the animation player and play it back and test your animation. So very nice. And then your texture region, I forgot exactly how that works, but I believe you can texturize your objects down here. And again, I'd have to kind of refresh my memory on that because it's been a long time since I messed with anything like this. But this is just so cool, I had to share it with you. And some of you probably have used Godot already. And any suggestions, anything you'd like to see, I'd be happy to tackle it. I think it'd be kind of fun. And over here we got a layout of the different nodes. You got your signals here, events. And moving right on over to here, we got our different viewports. So of course right now we're in our 2D viewport because we have the 2D game open. And then here's our 3D viewport. You can import your items and objects from Blender. So if you're a Blender user, you can create your own objects in Blender and then bring them on over using the exporter. And then over here, this is our script window. So when we're in our script view, we can see that we have a ball and a paddle script that's showing up right here. And then this is our asset library. So this is where you can keep all your assets in there. And this is actually where you can, this is kind of like an asset app store. Except I think these are free. Now whether they have some that are not, I don't know. But you can get all kinds of stuff out of here. I remember one time, probably 3 years ago, there was a 3D character of some sort that I downloaded that was really cool. It had the run cycles built in, and I think it even had a cycle where you could punch the character and he would fall and get up and dust himself off or something. But there's a lot of cool stuff in here that you can really use for enhancing your game development and not having to go pay someone to make it, unless you're talented and you can do it yourself. So yeah, that would be the asset library. And like I said, you can also import things into your game, whether that be images or what have you. You can do an import. And when you actually play your game, over here we have play the project like we did before. This would be play the scene. So if you were creating a separate scene and you just wanted to see the scene play itself, maybe it's not the main scene, then you can hit that and see how your scene is reacting. And the custom scene I'm not too familiar with. That's, for me, is a little bit new, I think. And then here you got GLES2 and GLES3. That's referring to the OpenGL rendering. And so GLES2 is a little bit more universal, I guess. It's something that's well suited for older equipment. So if somebody's got an older computer or an older style OS, maybe they don't have the newest hardware, the OpenGL 2 is a nice all-around choice. And so I think that's probably why that's there by default too. Otherwise, you can go with GLES3 and use the OpenGL3 library, which will give you more robust features, I guess, in your rendering. So you would probably be more inclined to use that on maybe a 3D game, I would say, probably. If it was, you know, a little sophisticated, you might want to go that route. And finally, when you're all done and you're ready to build your game and deploy it, we can come over here to Project, Export, I believe. And here you can have an Android build template that you can install. That's something I've never messed with, but that's something I'll investigate a little further. Export, if I remember right, is where you would actually export your game. Now, I don't really have any templates in here right now because, well, I haven't used it. So what I would do if I wanted to export my game is I would go up here and hit Add. And here you can see we have some choices here. We got Android, iOS, HTML5, which I believe also uses WebAssembly with the HTML5, Mac OS X, a UWP, and then of course a Windows desktop for a regular desktop app, which is what a lot of people would use. And then you can also for Linux. And I happen to be on Linux, but I could just as easily create a Windows desktop app from here as well, or HTML5, and stick it up on a website or upload it to a gaming website. So here it's saying that there's no export template found at the expected path. If I remember right, we gotta download those templates, and it looks like they make it easy for you right here. Manage export templates, that's probably going to give me a way to get those. So the template manager, let's see if I hit download what happens. Okay, we have a mirror here. So I'm thinking that's going to download a template, and those are pretty big. Yeah, 441 megabytes. So yeah, it's kind of a big template. But if I remember right, that template is a template pack, and I think it has all of them in there if I remember correctly. I remember doing this like years ago, back in the early versions. I don't remember if it was as convenient as this though. I think I downloaded the template pack on the website, and I think you still can do that. However, this is really nice. And with that, I think I'm just going to come back when it's done downloading, because it's at 4% right now. And I can't think of enough things to say before that gets to 100%. Because that's a long 94% that's remaining. So I'll be right back. Okay, and it looks like it completed. It looks like here it's showing that it's installed. So I believe all we got to do is close that. And then when we go back up to Project and Export, we have our HTML5 and it's runnable. Nice. So from there I could simply hit Export Project, and we could put our HTML file here. Here's our HTML, and it's generated a bunch of JavaScript with it. So if we were to open that file, it should load all that in there. Well, probably has something to do with running it locally. And here you can see that it's got the WebAssembly and the JavaScript and the HTML. So very cool. So I'm not really set up for WebAssembly and all that. Yeah, so that's actually got to be on a server, on a web server. Let's see if we can be a little more interesting. Let's go ahead and add for a desktop. In my case, it would be Linux. So we'll just make that runnable and then export it. And I think that's good for a name, so I'm just going to go ahead and save it. Cool. And so if I go back into our project folder, then this is our executable here. So if I double click that, it should bring up the game. So I'm going to go ahead and there it is. Nice. So that's our fully executed, compiled game. Very cool. So that's how that works. And like I said before, I could do the same for Windows or any of these other platforms, iOS, Android. So that's how easy it is to build your game once you have it all created and you're ready to run with it. Very cool. So I am liking this. And I think that's going to cover it for this quick little overview of Godot. If you want to check out Godot Game Engine, just hop out to the website there, download a copy and play with it. And like I said, again, if you want to see any tutorials with it, just let me know, or with anything else. I'd love to hear from your suggestions, and I will go ahead and jump on it. So if you happen to like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and hit that subscribe as well. Thanks for watching.